When a woman belittles a man, she is revealing more about the relationship dynamic than she may realize. This isn't about isolated moments of frustration. It's not about playful teasing that both people understand and enjoy. It's not even about occasional criticism delivered in the heat of an argument. I'm talking about a pattern, a repeated behavior where her words consistently diminish you, where she speaks to you in a way that suggests you're less intelligent, less capable, or less valuable than you are, where the tone she uses carries a subtle or not so subtle edge of contempt. And here's what most men don't understand. Belittling is rarely random. It's not just a personality quirk. It's not just the way she is. It's a symptom of something deeper happening beneath the surface of the relationship. When a woman who once respected you begins to speak down to you, something has shifted. Maybe it's her perception of you. Maybe it's her perception of herself. Maybe it's the balance of power in the relationship. Or maybe, and this is the hardest truth, it's a sign that respect has eroded to the point where the relationship itself is fundamentally compromised. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 psychological meanings behind belittling behavior, not so you can psychoanalyze her, not so you can win an argument, but so you can understand what's really happening and decide how you want to respond. Because the way a woman speaks to you tells you everything about how she sees you. And how she sees you determines whether the relationship can be salvaged or whether it's already over. Let's begin. Welcome to Femme Psychology with Emma, where we break down relationship dynamics most people ignore. If you value psychological insight over noise, subscribe. This is a space for men who think deeply. Before we go further, we need to clarify what belittling actually is, because not all critical or sharp language qualifies. There's a difference between playful teasing and contempt. There's a difference between constructive criticism and emotional erosion. And understanding that difference is critical. Playful teasing happens in the context of mutual respect. Both people are in on it. There's warmth underneath the humor. It doesn't leave a residue of shame or inadequacy. You laugh together, and the connection deepens. Constructive criticism, when delivered properly, is specific and solution-oriented. It addresses a behavior, not your character. It's delivered privately, calmly, and with the intent to improve something, not to diminish you. But belittling is different. Belittling attacks your competence, your intelligence, or your worth. It happens in front of other people. It's laced with sarcasm, dismissiveness, or contempt, and it leaves you feeling smaller afterward. It sounds like, "You wouldn't understand." That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why do you always do things the hard way? I don't know how you've survived this long. Sometimes it's delivered with a laugh, as if it's a joke, but the undertone is clear. She's positioning herself above you, and she's doing it in a way that signals she no longer sees you as an equal. This is not about being overly sensitive. This is about recognizing a pattern that reveals how she fundamentally views you, and once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. So let's look at what belittling actually means, psychologically. The first and most common meaning behind belittling is loss of respect. Respect and attraction are deeply intertwined. When a woman is attracted to a man, she admires him. She sees his strengths. She values his opinions. And that admiration translates into how she speaks to him. But when admiration fades, the tone shifts. She stops giving you the benefit of the doubt. She stops listening to your input with genuine interest. She starts correcting you not occasionally, but habitually. And eventually, the way she speaks to you reflects the fact that she no longer sees you as someone worthy of deference or regard. Here's the psychology. Respect in a relationship isn't automatic. It's earned and maintained through consistency, emotional steadiness, and the way you hold yourself. But it can also be lost, sometimes because of your behavior, and sometimes because of shifts in her perception that have nothing to do with you. When a woman begins belittling a man, it often means she no longer views him as her equal. She may see herself as smarter, more capable, more emotionally mature. And that perceived superiority gives her unconscious permission to speak down to him. Let me give you the scenario. You make a suggestion about something, could be logistics, could be finances, could be something as simple as a route to take while driving. And instead of considering it, she dismisses it. That doesn't make sense. I'll handle it. You clearly didn't think this through. The words aren't the problem. It's the tone, the subtle eye roll, the implication that your input isn't valuable. And over time, you stop offering input. Not because you don't have thoughts, but because you've learned that expressing them leads to dismissal. Here's what most men don't realize. Once respect is gone, it's very difficult to get back. You can't argue your way into respect. You can't perform your way back into it. Respect is either present or it isn't. And if a woman has reached the point where she openly belittles you, respect has likely already eroded beyond repair. That doesn't mean the relationship is over. But it does mean something fundamental has shifted. And if that shift isn't addressed directly and honestly, the belittling will only get worse. Because contempt, once it takes root, grows. The second meaning behind belittling is a shift in the power dynamic. Relationships function on a balance of influence, respect, and mutual regard. Neither person should dominate. Neither person should consistently submit. But when that balance tips too far in one direction, behavior changes. And belittling is often a symptom of perceived dominance. When a woman believes, rightly or wrongly, that she holds more power in the relationship, her behavior reflects that belief. She speaks with more authority. She makes decisions unilaterally. And she begins treating your opinions, your feelings, and your preferences as secondary to her own. This can happen for several reasons. Maybe she earns more money, and that financial disparity has quietly shifted how she sees the relationship hierarchy. Maybe she's more socially confident, and over time that confidence has turned into condescension. Maybe you've deferred to her so many times that she's internalized the idea that her judgment is superior. Or maybe, and this is harder to admit, you've allowed the dynamic to shift by failing to hold your ground. Here's the truth. Belittling is a dominance behavior. It's a way of asserting superiority. And if it's happening consistently, it means she sees herself as above you in some fundamental way. Let me show you what this looks like. You're at a social gathering, you're telling a story or making a point, and she interrupts you, not to add to what you're saying, but to correct you, to reframe it, to subtly undermine your credibility in front of other people. Actually, that's not how it happened. He always exaggerates. Let me explain what he's trying to say. On the surface, it might seem like she's just being precise, but what's really happening is a public assertion of dominance. She's signaling to everyone in the room and to you that she's the authority. And the more you tolerate that behavior, the more entrenched the dynamic becomes. Here's what most men misunderstand. Dominance in a relationship isn't always loud. It's not always aggressive. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, delivered with a smile, but it's still dominance. And if you're being belittled, it's because the balance of power has shifted so far in her direction that she no longer feels the need to treat you as an equal. That's not a partnership. That's a hierarchy. And hierarchies built on contempt don't last. The third meaning, and this one is important to understand, is that some belittling behavior stems from her own insecurity. Not all contempt is about you. Sometimes it's about her. When a woman feels small internally, when she's struggling with her own sense of worth, her own fears, her own unresolved trauma, she may unconsciously try to elevate herself by diminishing someone else. And if you're the closest person to her, you become the target. This is called projection. She's not actually responding to your inadequacy. She's responding to her own. And belittling you becomes a way to temporarily feel superior, competent, or in control. Here's the psychology. People who feel insecure about their intelligence often criticize others for being stupid. People who feel powerless often try to exert control in small, petty ways. People who feel inadequate often point out inadequacies in others. It's a defense mechanism. And while it doesn't excuse the behavior, it does explain it. Let me give you the picture. She's going through something difficult. Maybe work stress. Maybe social comparison. Maybe something from her past that's resurfacing. And instead of processing it internally or talking about it directly, she takes it out on you. You make a minor mistake, forget to pick something up, say something she interprets as insensitive, don't respond to a text quickly enough, and her reaction is disproportionate. I can't believe you forgot. Do I have to do everything? You never pay attention. Why do I even bother asking you? The intensity doesn't match the situation, and that's the clue. Because this isn't really about what you did, it's about what she's feeling. Here's what most men don't realize. You can't fix insecurity-driven belittling by being better. You can't perform your way out of it. Because the problem isn't you, it's her unresolved internal state. And unless she's willing to recognize and address that, the pattern will continue. Now, does that mean you should tolerate it? No. But it does mean you need to understand the source. Because if you internalize her criticism as truth, you're absorbing her unresolved pain as your identity, and that's a trap. The fourth meaning behind belittling is emotional detachment. When a woman is emotionally invested in a man, she's careful with him, not in a walking on eggshells way, but in a way that reflects care. She considers his feelings, she speaks thoughtfully, she values the connection. But when that investment fades, when she's emotionally checked out, the way she speaks changes. Belittling often appears when a woman no longer fears losing the man. She's not trying to protect the relationship anymore. She's not worried about how her words land, and she's stopped caring whether he stays or goes. This is one of the most telling signs that a relationship is nearing its end. Here's the psychology. Emotional detachment precedes physical departure. A woman doesn't leave a relationship the day she walks out the door. She leaves emotionally first, sometimes weeks, months, or even years before the actual breakup. And one of the clearest indicators of that emotional exit is a shift in tone. She becomes dismissive, sarcastic, cold. The warmth that used to be there, gone. Let me show you what this looks like. You try to have a conversation. You bring up something that matters to you. And instead of engaging, she shuts it down. I don't care. Whatever you want. Can we not do this right now? There's no curiosity, no effort, no desire to connect. And when you do something she doesn't like, the response isn't disappointment or frustration, it's contempt. Of course you did. I'm not surprised. Typical. That tone, flat, dismissive, laced with disdain, tells you everything. She's not angry. Anger requires investment. She's indifferent. And indifference is far more dangerous. Here's the hard truth. When a woman has emotionally detached, belittling becomes easy because she's no longer protecting what you have together. She's no longer concerned with your feelings. She's already gone. And if that's where you are, no amount of effort on your part will bring her back. Because emotional reinvestment doesn't happen through performance. It happens through genuine reconnection, and that requires willingness on both sides. If she's belittling you with the tone of someone who's already done, it's time to face that reality. Now we come to the fifth and most important meaning, contempt. Dr. John Gottman, one of the leading researchers on relationship stability, identified 4 behaviors that predict divorce with over 90% accuracy. He called them the 4 horsemen, and the most lethal of the 4 is contempt. Contempt is different from anger. Anger is emotional, it's reactive, it can be worked through. But contempt is cold. It's a fundamental belief that the other person is beneath you, that they're not worthy of respect. And belittling is one of the clearest expressions of contempt. Here's why this matters. Contempt doesn't appear overnight. It's the result of accumulated resentment, unresolved conflict, and repeated violations of respect. And once it's present, it's extremely difficult to reverse. When a woman looks at a man with contempt, when her words carry disgust, mockery, or disdain, the relationship is in crisis. Not because of what was said in that moment, but because of what that tone reveals about how she sees him. Let me give you the scenario. You say something, doesn't matter what, and she responds with a look, a micro expression, an eye roll, a smirk that says, "You're ridiculous." Or she repeats what you said back to you in a mocking tone. Or she says something like, "You can't be serious." It's not the words. It's the underlying message. I don't respect you. I don't value you. And I don't see you as my equal. That is contempt. And here's what research shows. Contempt doesn't just predict breakup. It predicts health decline. Couples characterized by contempt show higher rates of illness, weakened immune function, and chronic stress. Why? Because living with someone who views you with disdain is psychologically and biologically toxic. Here's the truth most men need to hear. Belittling is rarely about humor. It is often a symptom of emotional erosion. And if contempt has become the baseline tone in your relationship, you're no longer in a partnership. You're in a slow-motion collapse. You can't negotiate your way out of contempt. You can't perform your way back into respect. Contempt is a signal that something foundational has broken, and unless both people are willing to rebuild from the ground up, with honesty, accountability, and professional help, the relationship is already over. So what does a grounded man do when he's being belittled? He doesn't ignore it. He doesn't tolerate it indefinitely, and he doesn't explode in anger. He addresses it once, calmly, directly, and clearly. He says something like, "The way you just spoke to me isn't okay. If you have an issue, we can talk about it, but I won't accept being spoken to with contempt." Then he watches. Not her words, her behavior. Does she apologize? Does she recognize what she did? Does she adjust her tone going forward? Or does she dismiss you, deflect, justify, or escalate? Her response tells you everything. If she's willing to acknowledge the behavior and work on it, there's hope. If she doubles down, minimizes it, or turns it around on you, that's your answer. A grounded man also refuses public humiliation. If she belittles him in front of others, he doesn't engage in the moment, but afterward he makes it clear that will not happen again. And if it does, he walks away. Not in anger, not in drama, just calmly, with his dignity intact. Because here's the truth. You teach people how to treat you, and if you tolerate contempt, it becomes the standard. A man who respects himself does not stay in a relationship where he is consistently diminished, not because he's prideful, but because he understands that some dynamics are irreparable, and staying in them doesn't make you strong. It makes you complicit in your own erosion. When a woman belittles a man, she is telling him, whether she realizes it or not, how she sees him. And how she sees him determines whether the relationship can survive. Respect is not negotiable. It's not something you beg for. It's not something you earn back through performance. It's either present or it's not. And if it's not, no amount of effort will change that. Because respect comes from how someone fundamentally views you. And once that view has shifted into contempt, words won't fix it. So pay attention to how she speaks to you. Not just what she says, but the tone underneath. Because that tone will tell you everything you need to know about where you stand. And if where you stand is beneath her, it's time to stand somewhere else. If this resonated with you, comment below whether you've experienced subtle belittling in your relationship. I read every comment. And subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma for deeper psychological insight into relationship dynamics most people ignore. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who's part of this community. I'll see you in the next one.